Suffering from dry, tired, irritated eyes? Don't let dry eyes win. Use Sustain Pro. It hydrates, restores, and protects dry eyes for up to 12 hours. Sustain Pro. Triple action dry eye relief.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino Ciao. A gift from Italy to your home. San Pellegrino Ciao is a flavored sparkling water made with real fruit juice, finished with a pinch of Sicilian salt for a perfectly balanced taste. So which flavor will you choose? Peach, lime, blood orange, cherry, or maybe the all-new limoncello? Crafted in Italy with 0 grams of added sugar. San Pellegrino Ciao. Buy it now.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. David Patterson with Jake Novak. And that can only mean the left versus the right. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. And we think we have a bit of a unique idea to talk about today. We'll get to Iran and we'll get to the negotiations and that kind of thing. But yesterday was known for years, this particular date. I guess it's June 19th of every year, as a very special day. And it really commemorates, in some cases, the actual date that the slaves were freed, more like in 1866. And it also connotes the whole idea of a victory in the end for the entire country, for America. And many people, as Jake was pointing out to me yesterday, still don't really know what the date is about. And so, Jake, you've had 24 hours to think about it, and then I'll put my 2 cents in. Give it a whirl.
Well, I liked your description of it just now. You know, it's important to... I think that this national holiday that we had yesterday, the federal holiday, the markets are closed and banks closed and all that kind of stuff, I like the celebration aspect of it. Are we celebrating the end of slavery in America? And there's a lot of reasons to celebrate that, beyond whether you're black or white. For one thing, I think that the end of slavery in this country was a huge economic boost to this country. Slavery was keeping a huge amount of the country backward economically. You know, slavery was all about agrarian society. And I think even people who are trying to be on the right side of history talk about it as if, yeah, that's how we got rich in America. It was because of the slaves and the agrarian society, and they were doing the tobacco and the cotton. Like, no, they were holding us back. It's very difficult to have upward mobility in agrarian society because land is the one thing they're not making any more of, you know? Right. And the more your country is in an agrarian type economy, the more everyone suffers, really, and there's very little upward mobility. So the idea, you know, that's the whole message of that 1619 project, which has been completely undermined and proven to be completely wrong on a lot of things, historical fact. But the feel of it, basically the premise is America was founded on slavery, not slavery was a part of America as a stain on our early history and things like that. It was founded on an existing, something that was already going on here. It wasn't that right after they founded the country, they decided to go out and round up a bunch of people and turn them into slaves. Yeah, or trying to create this notion that slavery built this country. Look, slavery, slavery, no. African Americans, yes. African Americans, we know now, contribute. If you read very, very interesting books like Roll, Jordan, Roll and The World They Built Together, they contributed a lot to the culture of this country in the South, the architecture, things like that. Slavery was a drag on this country, not just morally, but I believe economically. And that's a very good point. Yeah, and it's nothing to be. They built it together. Yeah. Really, they lay it out. Yeah, very really well. Good book. A really good book. I read that. Barbara Fields at Columbia assigned that book for our History of the South class. She was tough, by the way. She took points off on the final if you wrote in the margins. I kid you not. In the blue book. In the old days when you had a blue book test. Well, this was a Columbia professor. We went through this. I'm a little older than you. We went through the same thing. Yeah. Over a period of time. We had a professor once that told people to feel free to raise their hands, but he never called on anyone. Yeah. There were some good ones, though, obviously. But Anyway,
was James Shenton
yes,
still
he was
around?
still he was still around then.
Yeah,
I was
really-
lucky. I caught all this. I caught Kenneth Jackson, who was the great history professor there as well. I was a political science major, but I took a lot of the history classes. And for some reason, his name is escaping me. Shame on me. African-American teacher who used to teach a constitutional history class for many, many years. Payne, I think his name. No, not Payne.
Oh,
Charles something. CV. We'll look it up. We'll find it. But we'll go to break. After we go to break, I'll get his name when we come back.
we got it.
But I was there for some of the great leading. I wasn't there in time for for Mark Van Doren or something like that. But or Lionel Trilling. I was too young for that.
Was that professor's name possibly Nathan?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No. So anyway, my point is, this country was not founded on slavery. We're lucky that we were founded despite slavery. And this idea that the country wouldn't have been able to have been economically function without slavery is not the message I think we should be focusing on this Juneteenth weekend. I think we should be celebrating it. And if we want to also mention the hardships of slavery and the evil of it and the human, just the human crimes that were committed, that's fine. But if you want it to be a celebrating and a day off, then let's make it more of a celebration of the end of this thing without erasing it from history. That's my point.
I agree. And that was, we did the morning show yesterday, how we eventually agreed on that really you don't have to get mad every time there's a holiday that, connotes some sort of a problem or particular dates that go down in history, like December 7th, 1941. You don't have to walk around angry the whole day. You can walk around thinking, well, that's the day our country knew we had to get into this war before they started coming at us. But I find sometimes people get stuck on the fact that some of these holidays involve time off, and they don't think people should be taking time off. I think it's great.
But if you're doing repentance, you can't do that. Repentance has got to be about true contrition on your part. And you can't say, oh, other countries were doing it and we got rid of it. And I mean, you got to say we were wrong, and beat your heart and wear the sackcloth and ashes. And I think that there's a place for that to some degree when you're learning history, to realize how horrible slavery was and how there were people who were from the very beginning of the founding of this country were saying we got to get rid of it, and they were ignored or they were overruled. That's absolutely worth learning. But I mean, how much beating of our chests are we supposed to do over this at this point and not move on? I mean, there's got to be a happy medium between not wanting us to cry over this and make everyone feel bad about it and erasing history. I don't want history to be erased. I want the history of slavery to be part of an integral part of the history curriculum in our public schools. Absolutely. And I don't want it erased. At the same time, this isn't about making 12-year-old white kids feel bad in class because somebody had slaves. It's silly. It's stupid.
And that's why I thought you made such a brilliant point before when you were saying that you like the celebration aspect of it, the positive of it, that now people were they still had a hard way to go because, many of them stayed on the farms of the masters and became sharecroppers. But it was an opportunity for them to live by themselves, to raise families, and to become part of society. And that really, as you said before, it really should be celebrated. And it might really be the best celebration of Juneteenth. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's also the great economic liberation that came from the end of slavery. The South, because they immediately a lot of the South went into Jim Crow laws, at least after the Reconstruction period, continued to stunt their economic growth. But by the mid to later 20th century, when they finally had gotten rid of Jim Crow completely and all those vestiges of slavery, I mean, the Sun Belt's rise economically was a huge deal, but it also tells you, what did they miss out on? They missed out on the railroads for the most part. They missed out on tremendous amount of the industrial advancements and improvements in this country. And now we can celebrate the fact that anywhere in this country right now can be a good place to open up a factory or a store, because you don't have to worry about crazy, unless you have crazy taxes and regulations. That's a different story. But you're not dealing with places where human individual humans have different status. That's important.
And I really never understood the actions of some of the Southerners into the 50s and 60s. It meant a lot to them to ride on a bus with people only that look like them, and that kind of thing. And meanwhile, the people that they left off the bus could have contributed to the economic development of that time, but they couldn't get jobs, and it was unfortunate. But it was good to see. I would say toward the end of the 70s. I'm just sort of guessing here, but you started to see things you didn't see before. Biracial attendance in the College Bowl games, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I think that helped to turn things around to the point now where the whole idea of discrimination and even the whole idea of hatred seems to have been really removed from our regular societal efforts.
Makes things better. For some reason, this example is coming into my head. There's a very famous college football game. You mentioned the bowl games. The very famous college football game, I think it was 1970, where Bear Bryant deliberately invited USC to come and play on Alabama's home field because Alabama was still not a desegregated football team. And he wanted to show the fans what they were missing out on because he knew that USC was going to kick their butt, and they did. USC beat them very easily. And from that, and it was a very short period after that Alabama decided to desegregate, and they had black football players. This is one example, and that's just sports. But, of course, that's a big part of the economy down there, so
absolutely.
I think it's both economics and
By
sports.
1974, Alabama was the number one team in the nation. But, you really have to admire the courage. And, of course, he had the standing to implement this, and I'm sure there was a lot of pushback. But it really it opened a new door in college football. And I think in a lot of ways, it opened a door about people learning how to live together. Because what happened after the end of the game, Alabama lost, Southern Cal won. They all shook hands.
Yeah.
And that's that's what America is.
And it was a night game. So it had real premier, it was really in the spotlight, both literally and figuratively. Yeah. And, these are the kinds of things that so many of us can agree on. But, I'm sorry. I just see so many politicians trying to take advantage of days like Juneteenth or the debate over curricula in schools. And they really want it to be they say, we want a conversation about racism. But what they really want is a browbeating. And, I'm sorry, it's tragic, but the people who deserve to be browbeaten over slavery in America have been dead for over 100 years. I'm sorry to say this. That's the way it is. And so there's got to be a way that we can teach this history, not leave anything out, get into the evils of it without deciding that this is time for some kind of payback. I mean, how, are you getting a payback on some kid going to school now, even in college? It's ludicrous.
The left versus the right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back on the left versus the right, and I hope you've stayed right in your seats because we're getting to some of the more interesting parts of the program. But when we left off, I was telling Jake that when I was in high school, now, when I went to high school, this was in a school district that they had tried to stop me from going to when my parents first moved to Long Island. So I get out of high school in 3 years. I get out of high school on the honor roll. And, it's like May, and the the letters come in from the schools, and somebody said to me, where are you going? I said, Columbia. And they said, you got accepted to Columbia? I said, what's the matter with that? It says, well, you're black. They'll let you in either way.
Oh.
And I was pissed.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, at that point in my life, I was pissed, but not willing to retaliate. But I know who did it. And I know where they live to this day. And but that kind of thing happens. And I think that sometimes the failure of our educational institutions is that they narrow what your thinking quotient should be. And I think that this is why your whole idea of the celebration is really poignant at this particular time. I think it's something that I'd like us to talk about next year as it's coming up to make it more of a unifying presence and not a we can now point the finger at you, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, and all these other people who hurt people in the black and other communities.
Well, I'll give people a template from the world of Hollywood, believe it or not, that movie Hidden Figures. Now, Hidden Figures depicts women, black women. They're absolutely faced with racism. It's not a Pollyanna, everything was great kind of movie. But what's great about it is that they overcome it.
Exactly.
And they, in the end, they kind of win. And the postscript at the end of the movie tells about how they had even more successes after this particular. The story is really centering around the John Glenn launch and his orbiting of the Earth. But obviously they went on and remained at NASA, these women. And it's an uplifting film. And you don't come out of there like you just saw the movie Platoon or a Holocaust movie. You come out of there thinking, okay, they had some real hurdles to get through. It's a shame they had to do that. But that's not what you think about when you think like, wow, these women really did these amazing things. So, and Jake, that's the way I think we should approach these.
What
things.
about this? It's June 20th, and this is basically the last holiday that we're going to see if I'm right until
July 4th.
July 4th, and then after July 4th, we have a couple months to Labor Day.
Right.
Now, on these other holidays, more and more, we're not being particularly uplifted about them.
No.
Christopher Columbus. Oh, I've read that he was a slave owner. I don't think that's true.
No, I don't think
so. But Labor Day certainly is something we could come together around, but it doesn't seem to happen. It's more like when the holiday portrays some negative conduct that it becomes like you have to hear about it for a week.
Well, sometimes the choir needs music, and we don't have the music on a lot of these holidays. We have it on July 4th. I think the July 4th holiday, the meaning for it and the story around it has remained intact. But most people don't know what Labor Day is about, correct? They don't need to, many of them don't really get what Memorial Day is about, although that should be easy. That's kind of an easy, it's in the name of the holiday.
Exactly.
It should be something that we get more of the music for as a choir in this country. But I think it should be a joyful choir. We shouldn't. By saying that this is a joyous holiday because it is the end of slavery, it encapsulates the discussion of the horrors of slavery. So you've hit two birds with one stone there, and feel good about it. And that way, you haven't erased history, but you also haven't turned this into a downer and something that people and a berating and a demonization operation. And that's a good thing. Oh, so we have the name of the Columbia professor we were talking about, Charles Hamilton. C.V. Hamilton was the name of that professor. He passed away a few years ago, and he was an African American legal and political scholar, and everyone liked taking his class because it was a little easier than some of the other classes. It was a fascinating class. I mean, every class discussion was fascinating, but he wasn't as tough a grader as Barbara Fields was. But Barbara Fields would give. I mean, you wrote in the margins. She gave you she gave you. You were lucky to get a B at that point.
Well, my friends and I sometimes would go and attend his class. He didn't mind if the students sat in because every once in a while he'd bring his daughter to the class, and boy, I'm telling you. she was a big deal.
Well, we had something like that too. When I was a student, because when I was a student, Roger Thurman was the world's most renowned expert on Buddhism and Eastern cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Roger Thurman's daughter was Uma Thurman.
Oh,
and
wow.
She never showed up to class, as far as I know, but I sure knew a lot of my friends who signed up for that class in the hopes that she would. She never did.
Maybe one day when he was sick, she'd come and teach for him.
Yeah, no, that never happened.
Yeah, that never happened.
And it's so funny. It's so funny. I know a number of people who are devout Buddhists, American-born, who kind of took on Buddhism. One of whom is a very, very successful venture capitalist who told me how close a friend he was with Roger Thurman his whole life, and he never actually knew he taught at Columbia. I mean, that takes a level of humility to not go around and boast how you're a professor at Columbia, back when Columbia was a little more respected, at least. And, that was pretty impressive. I guess that's real Buddhist. I guess he was a devout. I guess he really followed the Buddhist call for humility, but. It was a different campus. For those of you who like listening to us and thinking, "Oh, the crazy campus," it wasn't always crazy. Yes, it was always tilted to the left. Don't get me wrong, but it was a different campus. And it had a very New York and also an American feel to it. When I was there, felt like everyone was a sports fan. Felt like everyone was we were going through the regular American collegiate experience. And now when I visit campus, you can tell there's a huge percentage of students from foreign countries who have no interest in in staying here after they graduate.
Right.
They don't live on campus as much,
so there's no campus environment.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel as much of it. Now, it's more crowded on campus because they have a lot more students than they did when I was there and you were there. But it doesn't have that these are normal kids kind of feel to it anymore. It really doesn't. It just doesn't.
Well, I remember, and I apologize because I think I told you the story before, that when the other schools were protesting the war in Vietnam, took a long time to get it to Columbia, but finally the Columbia, students were protesting, and I had a friend. He lived 2 doors down from me in John Jay Hall, and he could care less. Black guy, wanted to be a doctor, did eventually become a doctor. I was at some event a few years ago, and this woman walked up and said, "Do you remember my father, James Lane?" I said, "Yeah, I remember him."
Yeah.
I said, "Did he finally become a doctor?" She said, "Yes." I said, "What are you doing now?" "I'm in medical school." So,
okay.
In other words,
very nice.
They had a very charted course.
Yeah.
So James Lane goes to pay a phone bill. He puts his letter in the mailbox, and just as he comes around the corner, Hamilton Hall, this is when the police come flying out to chase the protesters away. Now, the protesters were all white, and I'm not saying that the police were discriminating, but it'd be boring to keep chasing white kids around. And James Lane got into John Jay about a step and a half ahead of the police, and we never let him forget it.
Oh, man. Well, the best part of that story is that he used the mailbox and didn't go to that post office on Amsterdam Avenue. It was always the longest line in New York, by the way.
God,
oh,
I mean, the Christmas shopping at Bloomingdale's is easy compared to that post office.
Yeah, that was the worst.
But moving
10027.
Moving on to a current situation that just seems to, inject itself into every conversation. We thought we had a deal with Iran. I myself didn't think we had one, but we thought we had one. There were a number of different concessions that were made. In some respects, there were a number of Republicans that felt that the president was giving away the store. But then yesterday morning, our time around 8 o'clock, I heard that Iran had changed its mind, and we would continue with what the breaking news had been before. And then by the time I got on the show, the morning show with you and John and the judge, they were back into free fall. When is this going to end?
Well, I like to give everyone, from a journalistic point of view, I think it's important to go through all the parameters of the deal. Just make sure that the public is informed on it. But as far as an analysis point of view, and I'm not saying this to be kitschy or silly, but I say this very, very seriously. From an analysis point of view, it doesn't matter what's in the deal. Because the only question that we need to ask is, what will President Trump do when, not if, when Iran breaks the deal. This could be the most favorable deal in the world for Iran. They'll still break it. We could be promising them unicorns and rainbows, and the Iranians would kill the unicorn and throw a black paint over the rainbow. Okay? They are not going to keep this deal. That is simply because that's their MO. And the question is, will Donald Trump come down hard on them for real when they break it? And I don't say even 100% that he will, but this is what I will say. And I think that this is very defensible. There's no president in my lifetime that I feel is more likely to come down hard on Iran if they break the deal, when they break the deal, than
Not
Donald
Joe
Trump.
Biden?
Yeah, not Joe Biden.
Oh.
Not Barack Obama, not Bill
Barack
Clinton,
Obama?
not even George Bush, either of the Bushes. The fact is, if we are going to punish them for breaking the deal, because they are going to break it, and in some cases they already did, because Hezbollah attacked an Israeli tank, a sitting duck tank in Lebanon, early Friday morning, U.S. time, killing the entire crew of that tank, including the lieutenant colonel who was the commander of that whole battalion. Very big tragedy in Israel this weekend. 32-year-old uprising star in the IDF and good man.
Wow.
And the Israelis retaliated really strongly, and no one's talking about it out of the Trump administration, which, by the way, my contacts in Israel, they didn't have to tell me this, but they told me anyway. If that's the way this is going to go from now on, where after Hezbollah tries something and Israel knocks them back and the White House doesn't say anything, then they'll be okay with it, despite all the reports of how every Israeli is really upset about this deal. If Israel's allowed to retaliate or preemptively hit Hezbollah before imminent attacks or right after an attack, without any mention of it from the White House, they're okay. They'll fine. Then they'll work with this.
Your thoughts on this question? Do you think it's possible that President Trump is backing himself into a corner? Not that he's being backed into a corner, but he's waiting for just the right kind of attack, hundreds of people killed and that kind of thing, to completely unleash our forces.
Well, you certainly hope not, but that I would not put on him as for him being responsible for it. The Iranians, they're just not capable
I'm not
of
saying
doing
it's
it.
his fault at all.
Oh, you think he's ready to set that up?
That he is setting them up to go across that line. He keeps saying, "You go across that line, we're going to bomb the hell out of you." But then not that much happens. But do you think he has an idea of where the line really is and will retaliate when that happens?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he had said a couple of weeks ago that all bets are off if they target and kill American troops, which they did. They didn't kill American troops a couple of weeks ago, and we remained, the death toll on this war from the U.S. standpoint is miraculous. That those 13 who died early on in the conflict, it stayed at 13 all the way through, at least until now. We should all be very thankful for that. Not to say anything. Obviously, the families and friends of those 13 dead, it might as well be 1 million to them, and I understand that. But from a real statistician's point of view, if anyone had ever said that we would be in this conflict with Iran for this amount of time and only 13 U.S. service people would die, they would have been laughed at.
Right.
So I'm happy that turned out to be that way. But yeah, I mean, President Trump is keeping the armada where it is. He has not returned. The carrier groups are not coming back to their home bases. They might eventually, but so far they're not. We are in a really good position to hit them very easily when they break the deal. Again, remember, notice I say when. They're just going. They will break it, and the question is by what magnitude, and when. But it will happen. And if that's what's going on here, and we get some economic relief while we just wait for them to break the deal, and we get several more weeks of lower gas prices. It's been it's now 30 days in a row, actually, as of today, this Saturday, that we've had lower gas prices every day, national average. Then maybe that is a better trade-off.
When we started 30 days ago, we were at about
$4.56.
What did you say?
Well, the national average was $4.56, and a lot of you were paying a lot more than $5 a gallon, but that was a national average, and we're down below, we're at $3.95 this morning. So that's a significant drop.
It is. And guess what? We're just about out of gas in this segment. So we will go to our very kind sponsors who let the left and the right come on every week from 3 to 4 here on WABC 77 in New York. And when we finish with that break, we'll be back.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Knicks in 5. Knicks in 5. Knicks in 5 here on the left versus the right. You heard it right here. We not only analyze what's going on in the country, we tell you what's going to go on in the country, as we did last weekend. Jake, if we had champagne, I would toast you right now. The Knicks beat the Spurs. And they had the biggest parade I think there's ever happened in New York City on Friday. And all is well, except for something that you pointed out to me a little earlier today. Who spoke the longest when they got on the stage at City Hall? A, Karl Anthony Towns. B, Mike, what's his last name? Brown. And C, Zoran, just pour on with the rhetoric, Mamdani.
Yeah, the answer is C. He spoke for 10 minutes, which is ridiculous. None of the players or coaches spoke anywhere near as long as that. Reminds me of like when you have these preschool graduations and everyone has to come because mom, dad, grandpa have to come to get the pictures. And then the principal ends up giving this long speech because he finally has the captive audience. And the kids are on stage. They want to go to the bathroom. Everyone is antsy. I hate when that happens. He tried to hijack it. It seemed like everyone noticed how long he spoke. And this is a guy, Governor, who last year during his campaign for mayor at a campaign event, at a debate event, it was a debate, he was asked by one of the reporters at the debate to name players on the team, and he couldn't do it. He just threw out the name of Tom Thibodeau. He said, "Yeah, I think it's Tibbs."
Tom Thibodeau was a former coach.
Yeah, but last year he was still the coach, but he didn't even know the name of one player. So, and by the way, I even doubt his soccer prowess. When he was interviewed by Vanity Fair about why he loves soccer so much, he talked about a particular team as if it were like a political movement. He didn't mention anything about the nuances of the game. I even doubt that about him. I don't trust anything coming out of his mouth. But he almost ruined it. I mean, he just goes on and mentioned every player of every Knicks from years past, and I probably to overcompensate for that moment last year.
Sweetwater Clifton.
Yeah, he's going to go to those guys. Come on, but it is a nice thing. I mean, there was some shenanigans on the parade day. We had a couple of incidents of violence, but nothing like we saw after those games.
Right?
Thank goodness. And I think that that's another thing to celebrate. Can we at least
celebrate a championship without tearing the city up?
Yeah, and it was a good thing. And I know there was video, some people getting on a cop car, and I get that. But I mean, really, we're lucky we didn't have any. We should be thankful. But this is something I tell my kids a lot, and it's a headline from an article in Tablet magazine from a few years ago. You may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. And these political partisans, and I believe mostly from the left, have insisted on injecting themselves into everything. And I hear people trying to inject politics into this Knicks win. Oh, this is just like someone said, this is just like socialism because it was teamwork. Did you see the payroll for this team? That's not a lot of socialism. Well, 30, Jake, $40, $50 million contracts. Give me a break.
I felt
per year
that during his speech, he went right up to that line. The Knicks came back the same way I came back when they said I was going to lose the mayor. He didn't say that, but he certainly tempted you with the idea that that's what he was thinking about. Now, when I would, I was there for 3.5 years. I tried to keep the victory of the college basketball team or the whoever won the soccer tournament about them and not about me. The only way I would bring myself into it was to say that if I played with them, they would have lost. But really, it's just bad taste. And, the thing about him, he's very bright, and he is, he knows what he's doing, and he repetitiously does it over and over again, and it's kind of worked for him. But it's really, to me, endemic of the type of attitude that I used to see in elected officials, which is exactly what you're talking about. Oh, the Knicks won, and while they were winning, I thought this is like the comeback that I achieved when I became governor. You don't tie yourself to the team other than the fact that you admire them. You don't say that they're like you. They're not like you.
Or you just, you talk about how there's a New York, tie it to New York, and maybe not about you and politics. Politicians are addicted to one thing above all else, and that's crowds. If there's ever a crowd of people, whether they're there for the politician or not, the politicians want to be there. In my town on Long Island, years ago, a bunch of people just on their own started a organic classic car show on Friday night at the Long Island Railroad Station. So as the cars were leaving...
what stop was it?
So it was the Belmore stop. I live in Merrick, but I was living in Belmore at the time. And they're twin towns. And so starting a little bit like 3 or 4 p.m. on Friday, as people were coming home from work and emptying those spaces at that Long Island Railroad parking lot, people would fill those spaces with their classic cars, and then they would have a classic car show. So by 6, 7 p.m., the lot was filled with these classic cars and people checking them out and talking about it. And sure, this got bigger and bigger. And after about 3 years of this, suddenly the town of Hempstead has a band shell set up there, and every politician is showing up because, especially in this day of the internet and people being on their phones and shut in that way, when people go out of doors and assemble in crowds of anything more than 100 people, politicians really want to be there because it's becoming more and more rare.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised that it was Hempstead that you have to say it was pretty clever. Take the success out of the hands of a neighboring town and put it in our town. That's a new theory that I'm sure will be practiced along the way.
Yeah, well, it's something that Scott Rasmussen, the great pollster and author, writes about all the time. No great achievement in American history came from the politicians. It was always the people at the grassroots level, whether it was ending slavery, as we talked about, or other things. It always started with regular people. And I think the same thing with New York City. The eradication of this most serious crime waves in New York City, as much as I give Rudy Giuliani and Bratton plenty of credit, the truth is it started at the grassroots level, because when I moved to New York City in 1981 as a preteen, there wasn't anybody on my block, black, white, rich, or poor, who wasn't obsessed with crime and upset about it and wanting to end it. And we started it, not the politicians.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the reasons why the city is in good shape right now where that's concerned. But just on the note of these championship games, I think it's amazing how these reporters who really don't know anything about sports get sent to the rallies and they start calling the people by the wrong names.
That's one of the great things about, I'll give you an insight, so your career is in politics, my career has been in broadcast journalism. And one of the reasons why I gravitated towards, in my opinion, the only time you're going to see someone, especially on television or the radio, who really, really knows the topic is if they're a financial news reporter or a sports reporter. Because the audiences for those two categories are very well versed. So Absolutely. If you get a financial journalist who tries to come on there and doesn't know the difference between a stock and a bond, or if you get a sports reporter who doesn't know the difference between a free throw and a three-pointer, they're not going to last 1 second in this business. But you can be an anchor with a $15 million a year salary on a national news network and mispronounce the name of a world leader, not know where something is on the map, and you're fine. You're just fine, which is why in my career very early on I started to gravitate. Now, I wanted to keep sports as a pleasurable hobby and not a job for myself, so I did I did do some football broadcasting, but that was always a side job. I
would love to have heard that.
Yeah, I was Jerry Recco who's now on he was always on WFAN.
Jerry Recco, yeah.
Jerry Recco was the play-by-play guy for Columbia football, and I was the color guy for a few years. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. We did that on radio and on internet broadcast.
So not knowing what would happen years later, I heard you on WKCR on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, so I love
just as
that.
I hear you now.
That's right.
On WABC,
right?
77 in New York, where we are, just recapping and encapsulating the tremendous victory that the New York Knicks brought us. And I really do think that the victory of sports teams in their areas can manifest their economic development, can create all kinds of opportunities for people who aren't even sports fans. It's just that it garners so much attention, and there's so many stories that go on, like somebody gets hurt in the first quarter of the game, and the team's losing. They come back in the fourth quarter, and they limp around, and the team wins. I mean, these are types of things you imagine happening in the movies. But once in a while, they happen in real life, and we saw it in the last week.
This Knicks championship team and the championship run is the antithesis to one of the great Jerry Seinfeld comedic bits, where he talks about with free agency and all the trades these days, when you go to a game these days, you're basically rooting for laundry. The guy that you cheered last year who was wearing your uniform is now on another team, and you're booing that guy. Boo red shirt, boo red shirt. And, obviously Jerry Seinfeld's a big Knicks fan, so he wasn't exactly putting his money where his mouth is there. He obviously did go and cheer the team, and good for him. But this team did feel very connected to the city. It did feel like they were part of our experience. And there's not going to be the 12-man roster on the Knicks will not be the carbon copy next season. There's no chance that, but probably the overwhelming majority. I would bet about 9 of them will still be on the team, which is a big deal. And so it wasn't like rooting for laundry. I wasn't rooting for them because they had that Knicks jersey on, and it was because of the way that they played. And it really was more of a teamwork type of situation. Obviously Brunson did most of that great heavy. He was the big star, but there were so many other players who contributed at crucial moments and really throughout. And so I did it for the first time in a while with a pro team. It's different in college. I didn't feel like I was rooting for laundry.
Right. And Josh Hart was the type of player you root for there, because he came out of college in 2016, and I thought to myself, this guy's like 40 years old. Like, why did I bring him in? And boy, did he make some key plays all through the 4 playoff series to bring that victory to them. So as we come up on the ending of the program, Jake, your prognosis for the next week and how things will go on the national front and right here in the city.
Well, I think that we're going to get real focused more on the economy in the next week. We had a lot of economic news this week. We had the first Fed meeting with Kevin Warsh, and he proved to be very independent. He did. He basically said he kind of hinted we might need a rate hike before we get a rate cut, and that took some courage.
Came very close. Apparently, it was discussed, but he didn't do it.
Right. But, we're also looking at an economy that overall has absolutely outpaced a lot of predictions here. We were told we were going to have huge job cuts. Then they modified it as like, no, we're just in a no hire, no fire thing. But we've had decent job gains so far this year. In some cases, really decent. The stock market is continuing to break a lot of records. And, one of the funny things about the stock market is, and I say this all the time, you have 2 investments that you can make in America if you hope to live a regular lifespan. You can get into stock investments that are just a conservative stock-based investment for your entire life, or you can invest in a bunker, distilled water, and sea rations. Right. Because those are the only 2 options. If your conservative long-term stock investments don't work out because there was this terrible sustained crash of decades and decades, that means the whole world ended, and you need to be in a bunker somewhere and get and make sure you have water and your salt pills. for those of you who are going to be professional investors or use that as a side gig, that's different. You go ahead and do that, and that's fine. But if you're someone who doesn't want to actively invest and just be a smart investor, that's what you need to do. And every week, Governor, for week after week, I report on the weekends here on WABC what the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 did. And it's ridiculous. Every week, it's the same thing. Despite all these crazy days where we see huge jumps higher and then huge falls lower, at the end of the week, for the last several months now, it's been the Dow was up 1% this week, the NASDAQ was up 1% this week,
right,
and the S&P 500 was up 1%. Now, this week, the NASDAQ actually gained 2.5%, but the Dow and the NASDAQ up about 1% every week, like slow and steady. And to me, that should become more of a story. Obviously, you would, but if you think that's going to be me being yet another Republican saying, and the Republicans need to let everyone know how great the economy is, that's not me. Because being a politician and telling everyone how great the economy is, even when it's 100% true, has almost no rate of return on it. Because there's always somebody who's suffering, and you end up looking like a Pollyanna.
That is absolutely true. Jake, you're channeling your inner Larry Kudlow.
Yeah.
I mean, he just was on here 2 hours before we came on, and he's been saying that. And I've got to give him credit. He was saying that even after the big rally, the market was up 13 days in a row, and the Knicks won 13 days in a row, whatever it was. Yeah. And then he turns around, and but my point is he didn't turn around. When it kind of went down a little bit, he goes, "Oh, look, that's a correction. It's going back up," and he has really stuck to it. And I believe that John was talking about it when he had him on Thursday night, and Kudlow was just amazed at how much people are. He's not having to yell and shout. That people are listening, and they're basically saying exactly what you just said. Slow and steady, on and on, things will work out. As they basically always have. The market has generally been up 7 to 8% a year for eons.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work out for the markets, then we have bigger problems. That means something else really horrific happened. And again, you don't feel bad that you didn't invest in a different stock. It's because the whole thing fell apart. And that's people need to understand that.
So a final thought here on 77 WABC, and that is that your greatest fears have been realized. Jake and I will be back next week at 3 o'clock, and you will be here. And don't think we don't know where you are. We have ways of finding out. Thanks so much for listening. And Jake, tell the audience good night.
Good night, Jake.
Good night, Chad.
Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?